Numbers are the universal language offered by the deity to humans as confirmation of the truth. St. Augustine of Hippo, circa 354 to 430 AD. In this episode, we're diving into numerology head first and literally covering all things numerology. We'll be discussing what numerology is, the history of this practice, superstitions in numerology, aka common bad luck numbers, like the number 13, for example, which is a huge one, how numerology works, the numbers that you can calculate on your own to learn things about yourself, like that ever elusive sole purpose thingy-ma-jig, and the pièce de résistance, sorry for the horrible French accent. I'll do a mini read based on numerology for the significance behind our year ahead in 2020. So put on some comfy pants, or not pants, because pants, and get ready for our mega episode about all things numerology. Spirit Unplugged. Raw, real, and unplugged answers to all of your psychic, spiritual, and paranormal questions. Hosted by me, professional psychic medium Allison Boswell, and my sometimes skeptical sidekick Nick.
Welcome back, podcast listeners, to the Spirit Unplugged podcast. We are happy to have you back with our resident psychic medium, Allison. We are talking about numerology. What is numerology? What can we learn from it? How far back does it go? This and more right now with Allison. Hi, Allison.
Hi, Nick. You're cute sometimes. I think I'll keep you. So I want to say before we get started that this is quite literally a huge mega episode. Maybe it will turn out to be our longest episode yet. So for ease of listening, because I love you guys, and convenience overall, I've gone ahead and included the topic breakdown with timestamp references for each segment of this very special episode of Through the Looking Glass on Numerology in the episode description. So feel free to skip around forwards or backwards to sections you're thirsting to know more about, because I get it. Sometimes it's hard to just devour everything in one sitting when it comes to super long podcast episodes. Also, if you like what you're hearing in this episode or others that we've done, please take a moment to rate and review our podcast on Apple iTunes or via the Apple Podcast app. We somehow have 4 5-star reviews on there and have literally absolutely no idea where they've come from. So if you're listening to this right now and that was you, thank you. You're the best. We appreciate your feedback so much. You fill our hearts with love and joy. I don't know what else I can say about that, Nick.
Because of all that love, my heart has grown 3 sizes this holiday season.
Oh, that sounds kind of familiar, actually. Did you get coal in your stocking? Okay, so what is numerology? Well, numerology is basically a practice used to foretell the future via numbers, which can be found through attaching a numerical value to certain letters found in words, names, concepts, or ideas. Ultimately, it's the belief that there is a divine relationship between a number and one or more coinciding events. So there is no coincidences when it comes to noticing numbers, especially repeating numbers, and one of the most common ones is 1111, which is oftentimes referred to as an initiation number in terms of the spiritual awakening process that you're going through. And if you want to know more about that, the spiritual awakening thing, you can go back to our #2 episode, I think is what it is, for spiritual awakening, to learn all about that. But a numerologist is one who places faith in patterns pertaining to numbers to draw inferences. So it's regardless of whether the practice is for divination or for scientific methods. There's actually a lot of Venn diagram overlap between the divination side of numerology and also the more scientific side of numerology, which gets super juicy and interesting when we get more into the history and get to know some of the names of the forefathers of modern numerology. It can be as simple as seeing the same number following you around throughout your life, or even having a favorite number. So I'd mentioned that 1111. For me, for example, the number 7 follows me around. I see the timestamps 707 and 717 a lot. Now 707 is my birth month, July, well basically just July, I guess. And then 717 is my birthday, July 17th. My favorite number is 3, so sometimes I see that number everywhere. Nick, do you have a favorite number? Is there a number that follows you around everywhere?
No, because I'm one of the people that don't pay attention to a lot of stuff.
Which is totally okay, and I'm glad you brought that up, because you can start noticing at any time, and just because you're not paying attention doesn't mean that those signs aren't happening. It just means that you're maybe not in a space in your life where you're open or aware beyond human experience, and that's also not a bad thing at all. Numerology can also be as complex as calculating your own life path or destiny numbers based on your birth date or assigning alphanumeric value to letters in your name. So before even knowing that numerology was a thing or even becoming a full-on psychic medium, I would often add up the digits of my phone number for kicks to see if it would reduce down to my favorite number 3 or the number that followed me around 7. And I remember doing that from like a very young age, even the age of like 12 or 13. Like we sometimes pick up these weird idiosyncrasies that we do that are maybe somewhat spiritual, but we don't know at the time that it is actually a thing. And actually, I had no idea that that was real, legit numerology. But the reason why this particular method of divination is so fascinating is because numbers are universal. They transcend culture and language barriers, of course, and numbers are one of the few constants we learn when we're young. So it is a huge part of our life. We incessantly need to measure and gauge and weigh the value of things in human experience, human life, including currency and everything like that. And all of that is tied back not to language, but to numbers. So it really is kind of the backbone of like human civilization, I feel, in a way. Is that fair for me to say that, Nick? Because like, I don't want to go like way woo-woo on this.
No, everything that you're saying is making sense. And matter of fact, when you said that numbers are the first thing that we pay attention to as a constant, I remember when I was really young, I started paying attention to what year it is, around 1993, and I've always remembered that, so maybe that's a little something weird that...
Yeah, that might even be a sign of you paying attention to numerology at a young age where you didn't know it was a thing either. And to pay attention to the passage of time is a huge human experience thing as well. And we like to, look ahead to see how that time is going to come upon us, which is why I'm including even like a prediction about 2020 in this episode near the end. But yeah, numbers are kind of a BFD in my mind. Like we obsess about our ages. We obsess about, special dates and anniversaries. Like these things are significant to us. The whole kind of social construct of like quote unquote setting a date for a wedding is a thing. And people seem to really care about and attach a lot of emotional substance and value to numbers. Like it is a big thing. And so the history of numerology is very interesting, Nick, and I think you're going to love this because like you are a huge history buff. So hold on to your hat because this gets really interesting. There's a long history pertaining to the significance of numbers within divine practice and even scientific method. The word numerology, though, wasn't really recorded into the English language until about 1907, and this word is credited to Dr. Julian Stenton. Modern numerology is usually credited to none other than
I think the person you're thinking of is Pythagoras?
Yeah, Pythagoras.
The guy with the triangles?
The guy with all the triangles that I hated in high school because of reasons. He was a Greek philosopher who also influenced the philosophies of Plato and Aristotle. He's, of course, known for the Pythagorean theorem. I got through that one, thank God. Yes, I'm having bad high school math flashbacks here the whole time I'm mentioning all of it. But basically, the Pythagorean theorem, if you happen to not recall, I'm going to remind you and have you pull you into this bad high school math flashback with me. It was the formula used in trigonometry to calculate the lengths of the sides of a right triangle. So, you know that good shit. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. That was the Pythagorean theorem. Interestingly enough, Pythagoras was known for also teaching, this is gonna be difficult for me, metempsychosis, or the transmigration of souls. Basically a theory that every soul is immortal, and when we die, our souls enter new bodies. Honestly, the more research I did about Pythagoras, I thought probably we should devote an entire episode to the guy, or a few, because of his general like philosophy and spirituality and how there's a lot of intersection between not only like his maths principles, but also like other spiritual stuff. But anyway, Pythagoras didn't necessarily invent numerology so much as he was the forefather of some of the major theories behind it that are still used today. And so he is seen as kind of laying a foundation to a lot of numerology. The true roots of this practice, though, are somewhat of a mystery, as with like, I guess, a lot of these episodes we do about divinatory tools and methods. pyramids. But the practice was first found in earliest written accounts found in both Egypt and Babylon. Of course, many other cultures can be found to have connections to numerology thousands of years ago, like Rome, Greece, China, and Japan. Pre-Roman, about 325 AD, numerology was actually kind of closely linked to early Christian beliefs, which I found shocking that, divinatory practice was so closely related to organized religion.
Not a lot of people know this, but the apostles, when they were figuring out who was going to replace Judas Iscariot, they actually, I forget what they did, but they did some sort of divination to figure out who was going to be the guy to fill in the gap there.
I mean, now that I've done all the research for the history of this particular divinatory practice, I totally believe that, Nick, because there was actually a lot of divination interwoven into early Christian practices that then later became problematic, or it was spontaneously decided that it was problematic, and it was kind of ruled as this is witchcraft or magic or woo-woo.
This ain't nothing but the devil.
Yes. But of course, as I said, numerology was found to be one of the many quote-unquote unapproved beliefs alongside the likes of astrology and other forms of divination or quote-unquote magic. There are, however, still many numbers that hold significance within Christian belief, and I'm going to be interested to know if you know any of these, Nick, with your Catholic upbringing. Like the quote-unquote Jesus number, which is 888 and represents Jesus or Christ the Redeemer, and the opposing number, which we all know as 666, which is considered to be the number of quote-unquote the beast. Did you know about 888?
I did not know about 888.
It's weird that in popular culture we all know about 666, but I've never heard of 888 before. I'd be interested in if any of our listeners have heard of that number before. Also, the numbers 3 and 7 hold a lot of spiritual meaning in the Bible. For example, the creation of the world took place in 7 days, and the number 7 pops up a lot in reference to the length of God-imposed events, like famine and shit like that.
Yeah, I knew about the 7 thing.
Apparently, Jesus asked God 3 times if he could avoid crucifixion, but was then crucified at 3 in the afternoon. And finally, 3 also represents, of course, the Holy Trinity, or one God in 3 divine persons, the Father, the Son, as Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. So 3 and 7 are BFDs.
One thing I remember seeing in popular culture is sometimes Christians believe that stuff happens around 3 a.m. as a way to mock the Holy Trinity.
Oh, so would that be their belief that there's an outside force mocking the Holy Trinity through making things happen at 3 in the morning?
Yeah, something like that.
I've never heard of that before. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think they feature it in the Exorcism of Emily Rose. That was a good movie.
Okay, that's on our to-watch list. I mean, we're kind of on the fence about doing spirited pop culture about exorcist stuff, but
I think it's totally relevant to a point.
Yeah. If you guys want the thing, though, email us, spiritunpluggedpodcast@gmail.com. If you want that, email us, because we'll do it. But I know that we've been back and forth on that, for sure, trying to find creative ways to keep doing spirited pop culture. So, moving along, this is one of my favorite parts. I loved the history, but I also really loved this section that's all about common superstitions in numerology, because there are some that we're kind of aware of, but there's a lot of superstitions that are beyond what I would have expected. So numerology, like other forms of divination, can be seen as a superstition in and of itself, or pseudoscience by skeptics. Multiple scientific studies have investigated claims of numerology, and for the most part these studies have produced negative results. Surprise, surprise. One study in the UK attempted to find a correlation between the number 7 and self-reported psychic abilities. Another study based in Israel involved a professional numerologist along with 200 participants, with the goal of determining whether numerology could validate, this part I don't get, the diagnosis of learning disabilities like dyslexia, ADHD, and autism. That one kind of shocked me, Nick, the second one. The number 7 to determine reported psychics, I get, because 7 is a very intuitive psychic number, but using numerology to correlate with learning disabilities,
I'm kind of interested to find out how that would work.
Well, if you want to know more about it, Nick, if you and the listeners want to know more about it, both studies produced negative results, as I said, and basically proved that there's no correlation between numerology and determining certain traits of a person. But if you want to learn more about this and these two particular studies, we've included links to the white papers of these studies in the episode's description. So binge at your own discretion. Yeah. Binge at your own discretion. Back to common superstitions, though. Obviously, we cannot talk about superstitions in numerology without mentioning the epic number 13. Of course, the number 13 is a well-known and fairly popular superstition. Basically, the number 13 is considered to be unlucky in a lot of countries. And I'll break down for you when, where, how, why this happened, because number 13 is kind of a BFD. And some of us may know why it's become so superstitious, but you know, if you're anything like me, it's almost as if like, I know Friday 13th is a thing, but I don't know why. So the end of the Mayans calendar, 13th Bacton, was feared as a harbinger of the apocalyptic 2012 phenomenon, which I totally forgot that was a thing as we're coming into and enjoying the beginning of a new decade in 2020. But like, do you remember when the whole Mayan calendar thing was ending and it was like, you know, a little over a decade after Y2K was a thing?
Yeah, pretty much. Nowadays, if you miss one apocalypse, you can catch the next one in 10 years.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
But I'm just glad we've survived Y2K, we've survived the Mayan apocalypse.
Yeah, the calendar ending in 2012, which apparently had to do with the 13th Bacton, which is, I guess, related to the unlucky number 13. And then, of course, there's many hotels and skyscrapers that avoid the 13th floor, which is a common thing that you see in a lot of movies and a lot of, like, pop culture references. It's also apparently unlucky to have 13 guests at a dinner table. I wouldn't know, because we don't really host dinner table, like, dinner things.
No dinner party at the psychic medium house?
No, because a dinner party at the psychic medium house would get weird. And like, who's to say we're not always having a dinner party? Because like, there's ghosts here that should be paying rent and helping to cook food too. Yeah. Friday the 13th is considered to be an especially unlucky day, as I mentioned before, and some theories as to why the number 13 is so very unlucky include, here we go with another Christian reference. At the Last Supper hosted by Jesus, there were 13 people around the table, Christ and the 12 apostles. People believe this to be unlucky because Judas, the betrayer of Christ, was one of those 13 people at the table. In modern retelling of this age-old story, it's claimed that Judas was also the 13th person to sit at the table. I think that that's maybe over-dramatizing things a little bit, in my humble opinion. But, I mean, I could see why the number 13, if there were that many people at the Last Supper, could be a thing. And, like, talk about dinner party from hell. I guess. On Friday, October 13th in 1307, King Philip IV of France ordered the arrest of the Knights Templar. Most knights were then subsequently tortured and killed immediately after that. So that is kind of the earliest account that I could find of Friday the 13th being an unlucky day because of, you know, murder, torture, never a good thing, right, Nick? Historically, a year with 13 full moons instead of 12 posed problems for monks in charge of crediting annual calendars, mostly because it would upset the schedule of church festivals. But honestly, we have a year with 13 moons like every 3 to 4 years, so it's a fairly common occurrence, despite that being like a thing that they were worried about back then. There is also a myth that the earliest reference of 13 being unlucky or evil is in the Babylonian Code of Hammurabi, circa 1780 BC, where the 13th law is said to be omitted. But I'm going to dive into the Code of Hammurabi for a second, so pause and stick here with me for a moment, guys. The original Code of Hammurabi has no numerical values in it, and it was later translations of this code that may have added numerical value to each code depicted. Basically, the Code of Hammurabi is a well-preserved Babylonian code of law of ancient Mesopotamia. It is one of the oldest deciphered writings of significant length in the world and consists of 282 laws with scaled punishments graded based on social standing, gender, and whether you were considered to be a free person or a slave. Great. So out of those 282 laws, the 13th apparently was mysteriously missing, and that's where this unlucky 13 comes from. The whole concept behind this code of law is where the idea and the common phrase of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth comes from. is from this Hammurabi's code or law, which I had no idea about. And so yeah, I fell down a rabbit hole researching that. There are, of course, other numbers considered to be superstitious around the world, and I'm gonna get to that too. Nick, do you know any numbers that are superstitious around the world? I may have it, I may not.
Isn't 9 or something in Chinese supposed to be?
Okay, you're close. The number 9 in Japan,
Okay,
when pronounced, sounds like the Japanese word for torture or suffering. So the number 9 in Japan is considered unlucky. But also the number 4, which kind of looks like a 9, so I'll give you that one, in China is pronounced similar to the way that the Chinese word for death is pronounced. So many buildings in China skip the 4th floor, or I have seen in some anime, which is probably not the best source for me to be mentioning, where the 4th room is skipped in hospitals, which kind of makes sense in anime, or at least in a pop culture sense, because, you know, hospital, room number 4, the number 4 being pronounced as the word death, like, that doesn't necessarily go together.
yeah, I think I remember that when I was volunteering in a British Columbian hospital, that they didn't have like room number 4 or anything like that. There was such a high Asian population living there.
Yeah, that's true. I never thought about that. That is so cool that you can confirm that for me in a non-anime reference from your real life. Maybe I need to start living life, Nick.
Join us outside of anime, Allison. The world's fine out here.
I mean, if I'm not in anime land, I'm talking to dead people, so I don't exactly know which is better. Moving along, though, the number 17 in Italy, some people can be superstitious about Friday the 17th because rearranging the Roman numeral for 17 can create the word vixi, which translates from Latin to mean my life is over. So a lot of these numbers are connected to words that are then just like overall bad things happen with those words. And finally, the number 39 in Afghanistan, many people say this number translates into a word meaning quote unquote dead cow, but is also a well-known slang term for a procurer of prostitutes. So basically a pimp. It's if the number 39 is seen on a license plate, then many people will turn tail and head in the opposite direction as a result of this. So that's the kind of superstition surrounding that. Pretty cool, eh? I bet I told you a lot of stuff you didn't know about because I rock.
Yes, in fact you do, rock. Do you know the language that that would be in Afghanistan?
Is this quiz hour for Allison? You're the trivia buff in this relationship.
No, I'm just wondering if you got the language that they speak in Afghanistan during your whole research.
Yes, of course, but like this is a spiritual podcast, so I'm not going to go there.
What's the language, Allison? It's Pashto.
Yes, I knew that. I was just testing to see if you knew that. So how does all of this super cool, weird numerology stuff work? Well, practicing numerology is actually very similar to the practice of astrology, for example. Astrology, of course, is the divination of aspects of your life based on the positioning of planetary bodies and other astronomical features like constellations and comets. So in numerology, you're also divining aspects of your life, but you instead base this on basic dates surrounding you, like your name and birthday. So just basic information about you. Your numbers can be charted in much the same way as your astrological positioning can be charted based on the date, time, and location of your birth. Some of the more well-known popular numbers that can be calculated are your life path, birth date number, your destiny expression name number, your soul urge heart's desire number, and your personality number. We'll be going through each of those, explaining what they mean, how to calculate them, pointing out helpful resources to check out, and of course using ourselves as examples, because I'm sure Nick will love that I'm going to be sitting here telling him even more about himself that he didn't know.
So excited.
So if you kind of want to follow along and chart some of your own numbers, grab some paper and a pen. Right now, now's your time to do that. And Nick, give me some background tunes here for them grabbing paper and pen. Yeah, or I'll go dun 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 dun. Okay. I don't know why I always do circus music or sideshow music for that. I mean, I'm really trying to disconnect the idea of sideshow acts with spiritual practice, so I don't know why I keep reinforcing that with that background music. Anyway, we are starting with the life path number, also known as your birth date number. So the life path number is a single digit or number that represents the core of who you are, your personal values, opportunities that may come your way in life, challenges or lessons you may face along the way or need to overcome. It's calculated by totaling the sum of your birth date and reducing that sum to a single digit. So for example, my birth date is July 17th, 1985. Please don't judge me based on my age. Don't do the math. Honey, it's okay. Don't even go there.
We're young.
Yeah, we're young-ish. Emphasis on the ish. So I need to start by adding together 7 for my birth month, plus 1 plus 7 for my birthday. Then I add that total to my year of birth, 1 plus 9 plus 8 plus 5. When I combine everything, I get the number 38. I then add together 3 plus 8 to further reduce the number. Usually the goal is to reduce down to a single digit, but I arrive at the auspicious number 11. So certain double-digit numbers are exceptions to the single-digit rule, and the 11 I just got for my life path number is one of those exceptions. In numerology, there are double-digit numbers referred to as master numbers, which are numbers that hold a unique meaning without having to be further reduced. The numbers 11 and 22 are both considered to be master numbers, and they provide an even more intense meaning connected to their root numbers, like how 11 further reduces to 2 and 22 further reduces to 4. Master numbers usually symbolize that lessons, learning, achievements, and success, especially within high-pressure environments, will be even more intense than their single-digit counterparts. So for me, going back to, it's all about me, my life path number of 11 is supposed to signify someone who is meant to heal themselves and others via psychic abilities. The number 11 and its counterpart of number 2 are psychic ability numbers in numerology. 11s usually have profound intuitive gifts and abilities with no choice but to cultivate their psychic abilities during their journey in life. And the number 11 is also connected to spiritual enlightenment. I would say that's fairly accurate. What do you think, Nick? It's kind of surprising that all of that came up based on my birthday.
I'm still dubious.
Yeah, you're still skeptical?
I'm still skeptical.
Well, you are my skeptical sidekick on this podcast, so I would expect nothing less from you.
I'm just doing my job.
I know. And then, Nick, I've calculated your birthday, for example, so tell us your birthday.
It is July 6th, 1985.
So his sum total for the digits of his birthday, which is 7 plus 6 plus 1 plus 9 plus 8 plus 5, is the number 36, which we then further reduce to the number 9. So for Nick, his life path number is 9, and it represents an old soul that can see the quote-unquote big picture effortlessly, someone who wishes to reach the highest state of consciousness while supporting others to do so as well, someone who isn't afraid of change and enthusiastically explores new things or seeks new adventures, and also, at times, someone who may struggle to find balance between fantasy and reality. Does any of that resonate with you, Nick? Why or why not?
I would say that is, it sounds correct.
Yeah, it sounds accurate, right? Like, I would say you are definitely someone who can see the big picture. That's true. I would also say that when it says someone who wishes to reach the highest state of consciousness while supporting others to do so as well, I just kept thinking about how much you're like my partner in crime in this entire business on the podcast, and how you're not necessarily front and centered as the quote unquote professional psychic medium, but you are obviously helping to elevate my work and what I do. And what I do is obviously connected in some part and parcel to higher consciousness, right? So I actually found it to be really accurate, and I was almost very proud when I read that number as your life path number. And the next number we're going to be breaking down for you guys is the destiny number / expression number / name number. So how this number represents how you will express your greater goals in life. So versus the life path number, which kind of speaks to overall mission or purpose in life, this is about your greater goals in life. You calculate this number through converting letters in your given name to numbers. Then you sum the total, much like with the life path number, into a single digit or a master number. In in order to calculate how your name translates into numerical value, we are going to be using a handy dandy alphanumeric conversion table, which is used to do that conversion, as I said. And the table was actually created by our dear old buddy Pythagoras. Am I saying that right still?
Pythagoras, yes.
Yes, okay. I've learned now, I'm good. Who was obviously one of the founding fathers of numerology. Now, if I were to describe this table to you, because I'm going to try to describe it instead of it being visual in your face. I'm such a visual person, but I'm going to do my best here. You would start by writing down on a sheet of paper, horizontally, the numbers 1 through 9. Then underneath of those numbers, starting under the number 1, you write the alphabet in sequence, following the numbers upward. So once you reach the number 9, you continue the alphabet back under the number 1, and you end up creating a column of random letters under each number. Whew. Hopefully that's not as confusing as it sounds in my head, and it translates well over the podcast. So then basically, the number 1 ends up being the numeric conversion to the letters A, J, and S. Hopefully that makes sense. Nick, were you following along with that?
You lost me actually, but I'm, following complicated patterns is not my strong suit.
Okay, fair. Using this kind of table is generally referred to as Pythagorean numerology. So, if we, set aside the table for a second and actually use the freaking thing, my number for destiny number, with a lot of complicated over-the-top work for my full name, middle name included, and you always need to start with your given name. Okay, this is not married name. This is not if you've legally changed your name. You start with the given name at the time of your birth. My destiny number ends up also being the number 11, which is kind of unbelievable to me because, synchronicities are a thing, and the fact that my life path number and my destiny number are 11 is kind of blowing my mind right now a little bit. With my destiny number representing how I'm going to express my mission and purpose in life via the life path number of 11 and the destiny number of 11, well, I guess I must be really meant to help myself and others through my psychic abilities. I don't know how else to describe it because my life purpose is my psychic abilities, and the way that I will express those goals in my life are my psychic abilities. So my numerology reading is actually kind of boring, Nick, because it's maybe hashtag too accurate or hashtag too real. Now we're going to move on to Nick, though. So his literally is the most complicated name on the planet because this guy has 3 middle names. So this was annoying, Nick. I'm not going to lie. And I had to count it and double check it many times to make sure that I had the calculations right. But your destiny number reduces to the number 7. And 7s are known for their investigative ability and analytical skills, are extremely observant people who are very detail-oriented, quick-witted, and inventive, can be perfectionists at times due to their Sherlock super sleuthing skills, and because of this, they may live with inherent skepticism that requires an open mind. Sound familiar, Nicholas?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, okay, I just call you the super sleuth like every other episode that we're recording. And you are my quote-unquote skeptical sidekick, so there is that as well. If we combine the knowledge of Nick's life path number, which was 9, and destiny number, which is 7, we can kind of get, a foregone conclusion about him. So basically, we know this. Nick is apparently meant to reach what he considers to be the highest state of consciousness while helping others to do so, and will likely achieve this through his superpowered sleuthing skills, natural analytical mind, and keen observation. Still hashtag too accurate, hashtag too real for me when I connect all those dots. There has got to be some kind of conspiracy here with numerology. I'm just not even believing that this is a thing right now because yours is so bang on so far, and mine is with the double 11s and 1111 being an initiation number for spiritual awakening. I can't even with this knowledge. So I'm hoping that up until this point, you guys are still following along and you're able to kind of calculate your own numbers, and just make sure if you are wanting to double check and reference what your own numbers mean, check out some links in the episode description where I have a ton of resources for you to be able to double check your work and be able to interpret what those numbers mean for you. So moving along, the next number we're going to look at is the soul urge / heart's desire number, which symbolizes your inner true self, including what you may secretly or not so secretly crave or need in your life. So this is like, guys, the meat on the bone, the juicy stuff. What is in your heart? What do you crave? What do you desire? What do you need? What do you want? Deeply within yourself. This is calculated in a similar way to your destiny number, only instead you convert the vowels in your full given name into numbers using the Pythagorean numerology table that I mentioned before. Then you total the sum of those numbers and reduce down to one digit. The only tricky part here is if you have a letter Y in your name, because of course there's always a tricky part when it comes to divination. There's always a catch. There are times in numerology where a Y is counted as a vowel, and there are other times in numerology where it's counted as a consonant. However, we of course found a handy dandy article outlining all the ins and outs of handling the letter Y for you, so just check out the link provided in our episode description if you wish to learn more about the letter Y in numerology. So, that being said, for me, this was actually quite easy peasy as I only have 7 vowels in my name. So with some super quick and simple math, I've discovered my heart's desire number is 6, which represents someone who may be nurturing, supportive, and empathetic in nature, great ability to solve emotional and physical problems, someone possessing an incredible amount of compassion and a strong sense of responsibility for friends, family, and in romantic relationships, and basically someone possessing a caretaker spirit. If we think about that in terms of my heart's desire, what's truly, deeply, madly what I'm craving and wanting for myself, well, that probably means that what I secretly need and crave the most is to be loved and nurtured while loving and nurturing others, specifically close friends, family, and a spouse. Does that sound familiar, Nick?
Very much so, yes.
So for Nick, I do the same calculations. On the other hand, his are complicated AF because Nick has 50 million names and he has a letter Y to boot, which is annoying AF. So lots and lots and lots of math later, I found out his heart's desire number is, wait for it, the number 6 as well. So we have the same heart's desire number, which means we're both people that are craving, nurturing, and love and wanting to love and nurture others. Can you say #twinning on this one? Nick, this is kind of romantic. I'm in love with this. And, is this why maybe we're so compatible in life?
Well, that and considering we're both oxes and both cancers.
Yeah, we're both cancers in astrology. We're both oxes in Chinese astrology. And we are born 11 days apart. He had to wait 11 days for me to come into this world. So yeah, and my spiritual awakening, if you listen to episode #2, was because of falling in love. So if you don't have a toothache already, maybe don't listen to how we're so mushy-gushy about each other and compatible on all levels, including now numerology. The final number we're going to be talking about is the personality number. So this number is the side of you that you allow others to see and maybe how others actually see through you. This is like your truth talk number because it reveals whether you actually put out to the world the real you or you hide behind another version of yourself. So it's calculated just like the heart's desire number, only now we're converting the consonants in your name to numbers instead of the vowels, which we did with the heart's desire number. And as always, we sum those numbers and reduce to one digit, unless of course it's a master number, 11 or 22. So for me, my personality number is 5, and that usually represents someone who's adventurous, progressive, and a free spirit. Maybe someone who shows spontaneous acts of bravery with a thirst to experience all the world has to offer, can be super helpful, can be super playful, impulsive, and vivacious, but also somewhat restless and impatient, with major difficulty accepting the need to adult or see through daily responsibilities. I'd have to say I can totally see all the negative traits of those within me. I legit struggle with adulting on a regular basis, and Nick is probably totally agreeing with the fact that I am just like the most restless soul and spirit ever. I'm wondering if it's true though, if I do come across as like a free spirit, brave, playful, vivacious, all that kind of stuff, that may be the perception that other people see of me, especially if I'm in like work mode Allison kind of hat that I'm wearing. Do you think that's true, Nick? Like, does that make sense, the playful bravery side of things for me versus like in terms of how the world may see me?
Yeah, I think you definitely project that. And what you've been doing the past 5 years, not a lot of people would take on. Coming into psychic ability, a lot of people would maybe run and hide, or, figure out how they can get rid of it, or hide from the world, what they can do. But you just went out there and you slapped a sign on the door, and you got yourself involved in a community that usually takes a lot of years to get into, and you pretty much built yourself a career in a matter of months, and you've built it up to something impressive in a matter of 5 years.
Oh my god, I'm gonna cry. Nick, sometimes you're too nice to me.
I'll keep that in mind.
No, don't take notes. I take it back.
I'll write that down.
No, stop writing things down.
Be meaner to Allison.
No, just let the listeners write down their numbers. You don't need to write anything down. Okay, so for Nick, an infinite number of calculations later, because this man, let me tell you, has literally 1,000,000 consonants in his 5-word name that he possesses, like 3 middle names. Like, really, is that a thing? Do people have that? Really, I can make fun of how long your name is all day, but I'll move along to what your number is, okay? So your personality number is the number 1, which means that you may be a person that's action-oriented, very independent, inventive, pioneering, a natural leader. But on the flip side of that, you can be bossy or boastful at times, too self-reliant, unwilling to accept or not noticing the need for help from others, and you may deal with bouts of self-imposed isolation or loneliness. I'd say that's all kind of true about you, except maybe the bossy, boastful thing. No, wait, you can do that too. You totally are bossy and boastful.
I can be so bossy.
I love how you just said that. So what do you think, Nick? How do you feel you come across to others? Do you think you come across as like this super put together, independent, inventive, natural leader person that also is bossy AF?
Yes, until you ask members of my family, and then, they'll tell you I'm like a hot mess.
Yeah, you're every number but 1.
Yeah.
You're last.
That Nick, he's a nice kid, except he's a bit of a dumpster fire.
You are not a dumpster fire. And you know what? Dumpster fires keep you warm, so there's nothing wrong with that.
Dumpster fires, helping hobos survive the winter since 1922.
I think you think your jokes are funnier than they are.
You take that back, Allison.
Let me see if this is in your numerology chart. Does he think his jokes are funnier than they are? Yep, it's right here. Your jokes you think are funnier than they are.
Well, there goes the need to debunk this numerology thing.
I know, it's just so accurate and so right. If you are interested in learning more about the 4 beginner basic numbers calculated in numerology that we just totally broke down for you, and kind of like maybe airing too much of our own dirty laundry, but maybe also not enough, low-key, and what the different numbers mean, then check out some of the links provided in our episode description, because if you were following along to calculate your own numbers and we didn't mention any of the numbers that you arrived at, just head on over to those sources in the episode description and you will be able to break it all down for yourself, spirit fam. So finally, we have arrived at the pièce de résistance of this episode, divining the year ahead using numerology. And yes, babes, the fun stuff is here. I actually wrote a full blog article where I predict what we'll be facing in 2020, and it's posted on my website, www.allisonawakened.com. So go there if you want a fully detailed version of what I'm about to say. Right now, I'm going to focus on giving you the briefest highlight reel of what 2020 means in terms of numerology. So let's start by looking at the number 2020 to begin with. There's a 22 and 00 appearing in the year 2020, which tells us a lot already. The number 2 represents balance, while the number 0 symbolizes freedom. Those two words will be key themes we'll be facing in the year ahead. And just as an FYI, freedom does not mean you'll be winning the lottery or anything as exciting or epic as that. Think more along the lines of freedom in clarity and purging baggage affecting your emotional state. I know, not as exciting as winning like millions of dollars, but there is something to be said about the excitement felt in purging things.
Maybe millions of dollars next year.
Yeah, although not likely, I will say, as a psychic medium right now in this moment. On top of that, the year 2020 reduces to the number 4, and that is a number that means achieving stability through building a strong foundation. We're likely to experience a year of setting groundwork, getting things done, and seeing things through more than we're likely to dream big and achieve in a huge, outstanding kind of way. Now, I know all of that sounds really boring. You know, I stand with you guys. I'm, hashtag real talk psychic medium Allison. That all sounds boring AF. But there's a reason why I called my blog article predicting the year ahead, quote unquote, how I know that 2020 is about to be a year of adulting and getting shit done. Because this year, we're basically going to be, wait for it, adulting and getting shit done based on the numerology and the predictions and some of the channeling I did with spirit. That's where we're headed. Again, if you want to know even more juicy tidbits about this particular prediction, including general timelines for events and lessons we'll be facing, plus added advice and insight I channeled with spirit, then again, check out my website, www.allisonawakened.com, to view the full blog article featuring my predictions for 2020. And Nick, we're at the end of the road. We've talked about all things numerology based. Can you imagine?
I feel like my life wouldn't be as complete without having covered this topic. But in all honesty, it is very interesting. You did a very good job researching all of it. I really like the history and how you brought in like the Fertile Crescent cultures and stuff like that, and how far it goes back. It's really an interesting topic, and the fact that you find it in pretty much every culture, and it even exists in most society today, that you don't really think about it. Like, how many times do you avoid certain numbers or put meaning into certain numbers, even if you're not fully in the know about numerology?
Yeah, I think for me, the whole theme behind that is that anything new, quote unquote new, in New Age is not really new and has been around for ages. And that is one thing I loved learning about numerology, is that like there's a really rich, steeped history in many cultures, as you said. And it's nice to know that there are different interpretations or uses of the numbers among different cultures and societies as well. And, it kind of gives me comfort as human experience, Allison, that we may measure and weigh and value things incessantly and attaching these arbitrary numerical values to things like currency and worth, even self-worth. To some extent we do that, but it's nice to know that you can actually like turn that on its head and use numbers for positive purposes of like figuring out your own shit and figuring out what lies ahead in the year ahead, or your birthday this year, or, how old are you turning? This last year in 2019 was very important to me, and I'm still going to be experiencing it until my next birthday. But I turned 34 last year, and I think I posted it all over my Insta stories and all over my socials that like I was so excited to be turning 34 this past year, because 34 reduces to 7, and 7, as I said in the beginning of this podcast, is my number, because I was born at 7:07 a.m. on July, the 7th month, on the 17th day. And yeah, I was so excited to turn a 7-year. I guess next year I turned an 8-year, and 8's a really good number too, because on its side it's the infinity symbol. But it's just fun to kind of do those cute little quirky things, because it gives you the comfort and knowing like life is legit hard, but like I have great numbers in my charts. Like, it probably sounds so silly, Nick.
You have the best numbers.
Yeah, I know. I have the best numbers. 36, 24. I'm just kidding. Anyway, I think that's it for us, Nick.
Thank you for tuning in, podcast listeners. It's always great to have you here. As always, please send any comments, questions, or concerns, any ghost stories, any questions you may have to www.
Yes, I think what Nick is trying to say, if you listened to this episode and had some serious aha moments regarding your own numerology, or you have questions about what numbers in your life mean, please feel free to email us your thoughts to spiritunpluggedpodcast@gmail.com, because we will, as always, be so happy to help you. And of course, we will likely have another fantastic feedback episode series coming up once we receive enough feedback and mail from current episodes that are airing. Also, we have a ridiculously busy schedule January, February, March of 2020 ahead of us, because it's my travel season where I pop up in psychic expos around Southern Ontario. So if you want to see me in person, check out the events page on my website to see the cities I'll be headed to, and check out additional information if you want to book a session with me ahead of time. Just head on over to www.allisonawakened.com for all of those juicy deets. Thanks again, Spirit Nerds. Tune in next time for more unfiltered realness about all things psychic, spiritual, paranormal, spooky, and unexplained. Thank you for listening to us on Spirit Unplugged. If you have questions about our content, guests, or future episode requests, email us at spiritunpluggedpodcast@gmail.com. Subscribe to our podcast on Apple iTunes or Google Play. And join us next time when you need to unplug.